When you look at a brand new housing development, what do you actually see? I mean, most of us just see the physical houses, right? The fresh paint, the manicured lawns. But today, we are going to look far beyond the physical house. In this explainer, we're going to explore exactly how major home builders are evaluated on their community impacts. We're talking about how they actually plug into the existing, breathing world around them.
So let me ask you, what makes a plot of land perfect for a new home? Is it just about having solid soil, or maybe a really nice view? I want you to challenge that traditional definition for a moment. Because, in the eyes of modern sustainability and financial standards, a perfect plot is never isolated. It is all about the network that the land plugs into. A house doesn't function in a vacuum. It requires this massive, invisible web of infrastructure, services, and community lifelines just to make it a viable, thriving place to live. And that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll go beyond the property line. Second, we'll assess physical infrastructure limits. Third, we'll look at access to vital services. Fourth, we'll open up the site selection playbook. And finally, we'll wrap up with why community impact actually matters. Let's dive right in.
All right, kicking things off with Part 1, Beyond the Property Line, where we look at the official SASB mandate.
The big focus here is SASB metric IFHB 410B.1. This is a global sustainability standard governed by the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB. And what's really fascinating about this is that it demands a nuanced qualitative discussion from home builders. So it's not just about crunching raw data or, counting the number of houses built. It explicitly requires builders to describe exactly how the proximity and access to infrastructure, services, and economic centers actually affect their site selection and development decisions. Basically, they have to explain the how and the why behind where they choose to break ground.
Moving right along to Section 2, let's do our first big zoom out and look at assessing physical infrastructure limits.
The crucial point to remember here is that a new neighborhood places an immediate, really heavy demand on existing systems. Under these qualitative reporting standards, builders must explicitly describe their site selection process regarding 4 critical physical networks. First up, existing roads. Do they prioritize developments near established roadways? And how do they assess if those roads can even handle the new traffic? Second, public and alternative transportation. Are they building in areas where residents are going to be entirely car-dependent, or is there actual access to transit? Third, the electricity grid. Can the local power infrastructure handle hundreds of new homes? And fourth, water and wastewater networks. This one is absolutely huge. Builders must detail how they assess the adequacy of these vital pipes. They have to prove they're actively considering whether their new development is going to overburden the existing community's physical lifelines.
This really boils down to proactive integration versus reactive overload. The reporting standard specifically asks builders to disclose if, and exactly how, they factor regional infrastructure expansion plans into their site decisions. I mean, are they just blindly plugging 1,000 new homes into an aging decades-old water grid and just hoping for the best? Or are they actively communicating with local municipalities, looking at future expansion plans for roads and sewers, and aligning their site selection to ensure smooth, sustainable integration? This qualitative disclosure is exactly what separates the forward-thinking builders from the ones who are just creating future bottlenecks.
Now, let's zoom out even further for Section 3, Access to Vital Services. We're moving from hard pipes and asphalt to the soft infrastructure of society.
Because it isn't enough to just have working electricity, right? Residents need access to life's essentials. Home builders are required to disclose their assessments of access to commercial, health, and educational centers. For commercial and business centers, builders must look at the physical distance and the actual out-of-pocket cost of transportation for future residents to get to work or just go buy groceries. For health facilities, they have to evaluate the ease of access and what specific modes of transportation are available. And for educational centers, they actually have to disclose if they're using specific proximity tools to evaluate how easily kids can get to school. It's a completely comprehensive look at the daily reality of living in that specific location.
Now, you might be wondering, how do builders solve for this if a plot of land is kind of isolated? Well, the standard specifically mentions mixed-use development. This is a development that integrates residences, offices, and shopping all into one neat area. Builders will often disclose how they utilize this strategy to meet customer demands directly. By bringing the commercial and business services right to the resident's doorstep, they drastically reduce transit needs and ease the burden on local transportation networks. It's a really fascinating way to engineer community access straight into the blueprint of the neighborhood itself.
Okay, moving into Section 4. We're going to bring this whole discussion back to the boardroom. Let's open up the Site Selection Playbook.
When crafting these qualitative disclosures for investors, builders have to follow a specific playbook to explain their corporate strategy. Step 1, they must detail how their approach varies by market. For example, how does their assessment of public transport change if they're targeting a really dense geographic market versus a sprawling suburban demographic? Step 2, they have to identify the exact development life cycle stage at which these community considerations are actually integrated. Like, does this happen on day 1 of land acquisition, or is it just an afterthought? And step 3, the entity must describe its use of any specific codes, guidelines, or standards that incorporate best practices for site selection to optimize transportation and access to services. Basically, they have to show their work and prove their methodology.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5. Why community impact matters. Let's resolve this explainer by tying all these reporting requirements back to what ESG, environmental, social, and governance, investors actually care about.
There's a quote directly from the source material that is the absolute crux of why this standard exists. It reads, "Strategies that inadequately integrate new communities risk insufficient sales prices, excessive infrastructure costs, permitting delays, or reduced community support." This brilliantly illustrates that assessing community impact isn't just about being a good neighbor, it is a critical financial risk assessment. Think about it. If a builder ignores the capacity of local roads or water networks, local governments are going to push back. That leads to severe permitting delays. If they build miles away from vital commercial or health services without providing mixed-use options, the homes just won't be attractive, and that leads to insufficient sales prices. Ignoring this qualitative analysis leads to very real, very tangible financial roadblocks.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Are we just building houses, or are we building connected communities? The next time you drive past a new residential development, I really want you to look beyond the property line. Think about the water networks, the traffic capacity, the distance to the nearest school or hospital. Think about the massive unseen web that makes a house a home. Because as we've learned today, the most successful developers and the most rigorous reporting standards already are.